If you are a business owner, public figure, or in high level of leadership, and you want to curate an abundant, balanced life by uncovering the blocks that stand in your way and tune into your own wisdom, you are in the right place. In this podcast, we talk about personal and professional tools and strategies so that you can elevate your potential, expand your impact, and enjoy your life. I'm your host, Angela Williams. I'm a licensed therapist, coach, guide, speaker, educator, avid beachgoer, and I've helped thousands of clients achieve personal growth and transformation. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. My name is Angela Williams. I'm so excited about our guest today. It is a lovely pleasure to be speaking to a fellow Michigander and Michigan State alum, Brian Town. Brian is an author, speaker, educator, and founder of Michigan Creative, which is an award-winning branding and marketing agency specializing in web development, video, branding, and social media marketing, designed to help your business systematize their lead generation and scale their profits. As a fractional CEO, Brian works with dozens of clients who want to scale without building out an entire marketing department so that they can stay focused on their areas of expertise and serve their clients and customers. In his forthcoming book, The Lonely CEO, Brian shares his insights and best strategies for avoiding resistance, solidifying your belief in yourself as the right person to run your company, and systematizing your marketing and hiring processes to grow and scale a sustainable business. Welcome, Brian.
That's a mouthful. Makes me sound so cool. All I want to do is play that part back for my
Yeah.
10-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And she'll just so like, look, man, I am cool.
Yes,
I
I
really am.
promise I'm cool. I'm doing
Yeah.
stuff. Right.
It
Yeah.
wouldn't work. It wouldn't
Yeah.
work.
She'll get it one day, but maybe not.
Yeah, maybe.
So welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you. Before we started recording, we are just bonding over, again, being from Michigan. I think it takes a special human to appreciate the Michigan landscape and all of the seasons. Actually, it's really funny when I first brought my husband home, I think just my boyfriend at the time, and we went to a Tigers game. I love going to the Tigers,
Oh yeah.
watching the games, love the stadium and stuff. So we went in April, and of course it hailed.
Oh, I'm sure it's awful. Yeah,
It
yeah,
was awful. We were in shorts
yeah.
and sweatshirts,
Oh, I'm
like
sure.
had a mixture. Yeah, I know we had to leave. So
Almost every opening day I've been to at Tiger Stadium, and I used to play baseball in high school too. And almost every that first couple weeks of that and lacrosse season, it's awful. Yeah,
awful. Yeah, yeah.
awful.
But we were just talking about the summers too. The summers
Oh yeah.
can't be beat, and especially in this Florida heat, like we're gonna escape there definitely next summer. That's our plan. So
Yeah, there's nothing better than Lake Michigan and Lake Superior and just the cool. That's where we're heading next week to Lake Superior. I mean,
lovely.
it's
Enjoy.
just yeah, whole my special place in my heart for all those
Yes.
areas.
Yes. And no sharks, so that's always a
No
plus.
sharks, no salt.
Yep.
It's perfect. Yep.
That's what we got to worry about down here. So to jump in, I'd love to hear about your journey. And I know that you have a lot that you've learned and that you're doing for folks. So please tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I thanks so much for having me on too, Angela. I love to talk about this, and we were talking earlier today. Like, I'm on here at a perfect time because I'm going to give advice, but I want to also take it because, like,
Yeah.
it's hard. I think the number one thing that I try to tell people, and people have to remind me, my coaches, my therapists, they have to remind me, running a business is hard, and not very many people do it.
Yeah.
And we just all assume, us business owners out there, we just assume that everyone can do it and they can do better than us. It is by far one of the hardest mentally things that I've ever had to do, and more even now where it's like I've been doing this for 13 years, and I'm starting to get a little burnout, and I'm like, what do I want to do? And I have no idea how to do it, how to do that next step. I mean, you get up and you keep working, and my wife's a business owner too, and both of us transitioned into that. My story, I've really only had, two real jobs. I mean, I've had other jobs in college and since
Mhm.
I was in high school and stuff like that, but really my first career out of college was working for a school district in video production. And then I ended up getting another job in a school district and started their television program as a teacher and taught video production at a high school here in town for 13 years. And pretty much that was my path. I did that and I got to be like 38, 39, and I was like, "Nah, I don't know if I want to keep doing this." Like, there's got to be something. I want to do something bigger. I just didn't want to be a retired teacher. And now I'm going, man, I could be retired by now. Like, what was I think?
Right.
What did I do this for? And so talked to my wife, and she's a PA. So she was working full time then and had a little bit of safety net with her having a great job and did it and just decided to resign in the summer and started Michigan Creative back in 2011 in a small incubator space in East Lansing above across the street from Michigan State and kind of figured it out from there. Didn't have any idea how to run a business. Knew video was about all I knew because that was my degree and what I taught. And since then we grew into 6, 7 people, moved into another office. It got to be about 10 people a couple years ago, bought this building, and now we're close to 20 people. And, it went by really fast. Now it's just this last couple years too. It's been great, but also we've gone through a lot of changes. Like we're always trying to reinvent ourselves, I think, as a business, but then also as a CEO and an owner, you're always trying to reinvent that next you because you get to one level and then you have to kind of continue to get to the other. And I wrote the book, The Lonely CEO, because I think that's how a lot of us feel and sounds kind of like whiny, like, oh, you poor CEO, but like no one wants to be in our shoes. I mean, they really don't. And the loneliness part of it is if you're worried and stressed, I think you can't necessarily tell your employees. I've done that. Not a good idea.
Yeah.
You say one thing and they're like, "Oh my gosh, are we okay?" You lose one big client and they're like, "Oh no." And so you can't really do that. You don't really share it with your customers. You don't share it with sometimes your colleagues because they don't know. Your friends don't get it because they think you're a billionaire.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even want to share it with your spouse because he or she's got worries
Yeah.
and you're part of that family security. And so it can be a lonely place and it can be something that can really challenge all of us mentally, I think.
I want to ask you a few questions just to follow up on that because I think these are such important pieces that you brought up. And the point you said about nobody wants to be in our shoes, I think it's glamorized now. Like
Oh yeah.
business owner, it's a glamorized to be an entrepreneur, to be able to work when you want, whatever. But there are things that you have to account for. You can't just get up and whenever you want and do whatever you want. In a sense, you can, but in another sense, like you are also providing, like you said, the financial security for your family, for other people's families. Like there's a lot of responsibility and weight on one's shoulders when you are the CEO, when you are the visionary, when you are driving business forward. So that is such a key point. And I see people a lot of times will start a business and I go, uh-oh, that's not going to be a good fit because they want it for the glamorized parts of it,
Yeah.
but
Right.
they don't know or they don't have the full drive or resilience or all of the pieces that it really takes to stick it through long term. So it's very interesting to see who makes it and who doesn't. And it's tough. It's tough, I think, on so many different levels, like you said, mentally, emotionally. You have to get up and be creative every day. You have to figure out how to balance the the numbers, right? You have to think about the way that you're speaking to your team and
Yeah.
bringing life into them and energy into them and what you share and whatnot. So there's just constantly decisions that need to be made. And so it's mentally and emotionally
Yeah.
taxing for sure.
It is.
And you mentioned it being lonely out there, and it's hard to tell people who don't get it. And so, my first question is, have you found spaces where you can speak to people who get it, like other business owners who are maybe doing something similar or locally to you that you feel like truly get it?
Yeah, there's lots of groups that you can do. CEO groups are something that's really been helpful in our area. There's lots of groups, and I think the biggest thing is to find a coach and a business coach and a therapist. Like I want to say that again. Thankfully, therapy has become more normalized over the last 4 or 5 years, largely due to COVID. But I just think that is something that you got to have that space. Like the day you start a business is the day you should get a therapist
Yeah.
and a business coach, someone to just run things by you to make sure that you're kind of going down the right path and ask questions to. And I think I was one of my business coaches, John, said it best to me. I think he was very concerned about making sure that I was at my very best
Mhm.
because he felt that that's what matters most is he's like when you're down and because what I told him I was frustrated because I'm that teacher and so I would always be like rah rah and cheesy quotes and
Yeah.
this kind of thing on our group meetings. And then things weren't going well. So I stopped doing it. And I was like, no one's listening anyway. Who cares? And I was telling him that story. He's like, yeah, you can't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
you being down, you're down 10%, but your people feel it 40%.
Yeah.
I mean, they feel it, whatever the percentage is, that doesn't matter. But that piece for me has always stuck with me about how important it is. But you can't do that if you're not taking care of yourself and getting that support and being able to run those things by. And I say good advice to other people all the time and I don't take it very well, but a couple things that I have to remind myself of is I think two things. One, you're not alone. Everybody struggles with these. Every business owner has struggled. Every time I would talk to somebody about, man, I'm worried about payroll, I'm worried about these invoices, and they had 30 years experience in it and they're super successful. And I expected them to say, well, here's what you do.
Yeah.
And what do they say? Oh yeah, I know, I get it. Well, that doesn't help,
Yeah.
but
Wait
it
a
does.
second.
Yeah, but it does help.
Yeah.
And I think also sort of thinking we don't spend a lot of time looking back at all the great things that we've done. Let's pretend that tomorrow every client says, that's it, we're done.
Mm.
Every employee says, see you later, and we have to shut down the business. And that'd be terrible. But man, we did some good stuff for 13 years. We employed a lot of people, gave some people some jump starts to their careers. I've got a master's degree. I can get a job. I mean, I think when you look at it in that way, it really kind of helps put it into perspective that you just have to keep making those decisions and being that leader. My wife, too, and she's relatively new into business. She started a med spa 2 years ago after a career in ortho surgery and just decided, I'm going to quit and run a business. I don't know where she got that idea. And I would like to say she's so successful because it just soaked off on her. All my
Yeah.
genius, not true. She's smarter, much smarter than I am. But she's actually what she's doing is looking at all the things that I messed up over the last 13 years and going, well, I don't want to do that. No.
There you go. Effective. Right.
Yeah, yeah. But what she said is she's like, I just thought I'd start this business and it would just go really well and things would be fun and we'd have patience and all that. It's true. That's
Yeah.
all happened. But
Yeah.
every day there's something.
Mhm.
It's either, and not big somethings. It's like, okay, I've got to get this form fixed because this didn't work and this process doesn't work and this service isn't priced right. And this employee said something to someone. Now I got to talk to her.
Mhm.
And it's always something.
Yeah.
And that's never going to stop. And I think once you realize, I mean, there's going to get a time where things are going to get smoother,
Right.
things are going to get, but you're always going to have to change and evolve because society changes and evolves and the economy changes and evolves and people grow up
Right.
and people come and go. And so I think knowing that simple fact is that one, taking a look at all the great things that you've done, like looking around here and going, I own this building. We just finished a great project for a client that loves it and it's amazing. And all we're focused on is why this one customer's mad because we missed a meeting today. When you got 90% of our work, and if when our clients 90 some percent, you never hear from them and they're super happy.
Right. Exactly. And it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And so it's like we focus so much on being perfect, or because it does matter that we give good quality service, but being perfect is such a high standard that we try to go after. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's unattainable. And so these things are going to happen. And so I think that's where I see a lot of the mindset piece come in for business owners is trying to be perfect instead of, okay, let's have grace with ourselves and we will address it as it comes. I really am glad you talked about your therapist and your coach. That's something I'm always talking about as a therapist and coach
Sure.
myself,
Yep.
and who always has a therapist and coach available to them. Because, like you said, that is one way to combat the loneliness because you get to share and really talk through the complexity of what goes through our minds every single day, right? There's a lot of decisions to be made.
Yeah. Questions if you're doing the right thing.
Yes, of course. The self-doubt can creep in and it's all very normal. And I appreciate you for saying that because that is so, so important. Because I think
Oh yeah.
often, especially as solopreneurs too, like operating in silos, and it's like, no, we need to connect, we need to hear, we need to see that this is normal and there's solutions and support available. So thank
Yep.
you for sharing that. And I love what you said about looking back at all of the great things. That's something that I really hammer in my clients is like, okay,
Yeah.
tell me what went right. Tell me all the things you
Yeah. All the
how
time.
often are you reflecting on this?
And I try to tell my employees that too. Like I want them all to, because there a lot of them, especially our project managers, are dealing with fires a lot of the time.
Yeah,
Not that they start necessarily, it's just the agency life. I try to say, hey, do you remember Avalon Healing? Do you remember that project that we did? And do you remember what they said to us when we showed that video to them? Do you remember that? And that kind of thing is like, don't forget that. Those are the kind of things that I want you to try to remember. And
yeah,
work is tough and I get it. And agency life is not fun. And we all have our personal problems that we have to deal with. And we also have to perform at work. And it's a crazy time out there in the world today for some of us. And,
yeah, absolutely. That's another thing too, is like, how do we keep those wins front and center, right? It's like, what do we need to do to make sure those are the things that are up in front of our face and even while we're dealing with the fires. So I
yeah,
think that helps solidify the truth and the proof for us that we are doing right. We are valuable. We are worthy. We are doing something that matters. And I think that's something that gets lost, right?
Yep. I do. I agree.
Yeah. I want to talk about your why. You said we get into this business, and I want to talk more about your specific why and what drives you, what continues to bring you to showing up every single day.
Yeah, I love that because I have to remind myself of that. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know, but I can tell you a story that I think really helped me, and it was something that I don't remember what it was, 8, 9 months ago now. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mhm.
It just it's not fulfilling enough. I'm kind of getting tired of it, and I don't know what my gift is anymore to give. It just seems like we're running this business and it's a business and it's not whatever. And so I forgot that I ordered this book, and this book, I'm a big book nerd, and it came in this package, and it was by Stephen Pressfield, and it had like some cards in it that had pictures on it, and it had his book, and there was like artistic things and whatever, and it had this. So I opened it up. It was signed because I paid to get it signed because I'm a nerd.
Mhm.
And in the first couple of pages, it had this image. I have it at home. I don't have it here, but of this character that was looming over, the scary character was looming over this guy in bed. And it says, "What time does resistance wake you up in the morning?"
Mhm.
And, or "What time does resistance greet you?" And
Mhm.
I was like, "Resist, what is this?" I'm like, I read about it, and it's basically imposter syndrome. And I was like, well, it greets me first thing in the morning. And had my headphones on and get up really early, and my wife and I have our little routine. And I went out there, and I was like, she's like, "What's going on with you, weirdo?" I was like looking at her, and I'm like, I figured it out. I figured out what's had me this whole time, and it's that resistance piece of believing that you have everything that you need to do it, and you have something of great value to offer. I think we get into business and we're high performers, right? We're imposter syndrome, which is a good thing for some of us, because I think those of us that have imposter syndrome worked really hard because we were always afraid that we'd get found out, that we weren't really that good. And so it's been good because everything that I looked back on my life, my family, my career, I mean, you couldn't have read it. It's great. Like, my kids are amazing. My life is amazing. I had a great career and great time in college. I mean, you couldn't really write a better script, and the business is still here. But I didn't really think it had anything to do with me. I just thought it was circumstance. I'm like, well, anybody could have run an award-winning television program and sent kids all over the world who are still in their career today. Like, of course, that's what you do. That's part of your job, right? Or anybody could have just decided to start a business from scratch and figure it out and still be there. And I'm like, well, that's what every business owner does.
Mhm.
And I got lucky, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that made me kind of realize that I do have something to give.
Mhm.
And so I think for me, my why is, once I figured out what that is, because I was like, oh, I'm just a business owner, I'm just a marketing guy, whatever.
Yeah.
But I have this creative gift and inspirational gift that I can inspire others to be great and do great work that changes lives. And I felt that it'd be a shame for me not to use it. And
Yeah.
I think that when I get into a place, and I get into it often, it's kind of dark and like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I try to remember that piece, that it's just resistance talking to me.
Anyone
Sure.
could start a business.
Yeah.
Anyone could continue a business, but not just anyone did. You did. So it's like, I think that's the other thing to remember too, is that we take for granted all of the pieces to us that brought us here, the work we put in, the literal blood, sweat, and tears that we have sustained to, get here and stay here. It is not for the weak, right? And so I think that's the other thing too, is I think when we're business owners, we're entrepreneurs, we look to other people and we kind of surround ourselves with other entrepreneurs, or we try
Mhm.
to, right? And so we think, oh yeah, this is the majority. And this is not the majority.
No, it's not. We're a slim minority.
We are, because it's like it's hard to wake up and not know you might have some income coming in, but if a client pulls out, or, right, like we have to go and generate that money. You can't just drive up, park your car, and get paid. So I think that's such an important point, that we have that fallacy of thought. And what you said about the resistance too, I think this is just the most common, right,
It
struggle,
is.
is we think that we deep down we have a subconscious belief somewhere, right, that we're not good enough, or that we're not worthy, right, or that we're not valuable. And I think that's what drives us to work so hard and prove ourselves,
Yeah,
even though we
yeah.
have a plethora of proof that we
Oh,
are,
yeah.
right?
It's
That we
all
are
right there in
so
front of us, right?
good. We are so valuable. That's the kind of subconscious thoughts that I work on with my clients. I talk about that blend of mindset and therapy where my skill set is, but it's like we have to consistently do that work on ourselves as we iterate to the next level, like you were talking about
Yeah.
before, because it's not just about doing the same thing over and over. You're challenging yourself to maybe even think about what's your next level, like expanding or minimizing what's going on or
Right.
retiring, or right, like you have a next level that's going to challenge you. And so that can pull up our subconscious beliefs in a different way than we've experienced them before. I think that's so.
Yeah, it is, and it's just so funny because 'cause you're at different spots, like you said, is and sometimes you don't feel as good, and you still have to where having that mental energy to be able to think in a way that you need to think as a business owner is tough, and so you talked about mindset a lot. I mean, one of the biggest things that's really helped me is that morning routine and meditation,
Mhm.
manifestation, those kind of things, which I would have told you 10 years ago are silly.
Yep.
For me,
Yeah.
it's been so helpful. Like those are the tools that for me that every morning I'm doing a set meditation that I do and I read and then I do some exercise and make sure that that's a part of even on the days I don't want to.
Yes.
And
Yes.
because that mental piece of it is so important and it's just that visualization for me it's like couple of meditations I do. One is like picture yourself your perfect day when you were feeling your best and wherever that location is. And for me, it's in Lake Superior, swimming off the boat with my daughter, who was amazing. And we were just having so much fun. I'm like, this is it. Like this is my perfect day. And
Mhm.
then take that energy into the day ahead of you.
Yeah.
And that helps. I mean, those are the kind of things that I think for me have really helped.
Mhm.
And especially having that set morning routine. And I've just the last couple weeks I've gotten out of it a little bit and I can tell.
Yeah, same for me. When I have my morning routine now, it's a little different with the baby because and we have a dog that needs to get walked every single day, or we have a problem. But
Yes.
I get up, we go take a walk. That's the very first thing we do. And I'm listening to some sort of podcast or meditate something while I'm walking. And sometimes it's just silence because I need
Yeah,
to let
whatever.
my creative juices go and I'm creating or whatever. But I agree. I think that routine to prime your brain for the work that you do and to get you in the right mental space and energy to do all the things that you need to do. That is so key to anyone who's successful. I mean, I'm sure you've read books about it, right?
They all have it. Yeah.
Everyone has, yes,
Yeah.
everyone
They
has
all do it.
those mental practices, those physical practices. It's so important. So thank you for sharing yours. I think that is very helpful to hear how other people are doing things too. Something I also want to talk about is the belief. So when you started, you talked about imposter syndrome. When you started your journey in business, you kind of said, "I don't know, who does know what they're doing?"
I still don't. Yeah.
Yeah, like we're just out here. We look like we have it together, but we're winging stuff over here. But when you think about your journey from starting point to now, what would you say the beliefs that you've really worked on the most? If you feel free to share, feel okay to share that.
I think it goes back to that idea that you are the one and that you do have that innate ability to have people follow you and believe in you. And
Mhm,
I think that is something as a leader. I think that leadership skill is something that I'm always trying to do a better job at. You know, we're never really taught anywhere how to be good leaders.
yeah.
We know a lot of bad leaders. We know some good leaders, but a lot of us haven't experienced that. So we don't know. There's no class on leadership. And that's been my focus is to really continue to always work on my leadership skills.
Mhm,
And I think that constant reminder that I have something that people want, whether it's, and I've got people around me that are much smarter and brighter, and I've done that. I mean, and we've got a great staff, but there's still that piece where I think because you've been in it for so long and you've done it for so long that you don't really think that you have that much to offer anymore. It's just
mhm,
you just happen to be the owner of the company.
yeah.
But I think reminding people, reminding myself that people need that leader still,
Mhm,
and people need that inspiration to be great. And
yeah.
I think if I can remind myself that I'm decent at that, because I did it through high school. You can't be a high school teacher without being able to inspire somebody. I think doing that as a creative person, we also have a lot to offer our clients, our customers, and our employees. I think creativity right now has gotten lost a lot, and everyone in every company needs some creative person to help them think through problems or create something. And so I think just realizing that I have a skill set that I can give to other people, I think is for me, I always have to remind myself of that.
Are you a high achieving female leader ready to break through your success ceiling? I would love to invite you to join the Aligned Leader Circle, a warm, welcoming space where ambitious and smart female leaders come together to grow. This isn't just about developing your leadership skills, it's about aligning your mindset, emotions, and body wisdom so you can lead with greater ease and purpose. In this exclusive community, you'll experience real transformations, gain deep self awareness, and connect with women who are committed to thriving. If you're ready to go beyond your limits in a safe, collaborative environment, visit angelamarie.co/individuals to join us at Founders Rates for a limited time only. Now, back to the show.
100%. Yeah. I think that gives us the supportive belief that I am capable, I am able, I am valuable, I can give value, right? All of those things that bring in that trigger our imposter syndrome. It's like, how do we continue to give ourselves proof that we are here for a reason, that we are doing this, we are the one. I love that.
And I think giving yourself a little bit of credit and space, like it's all right. Like
Yeah.
there's no way that you're going to keep every client. There's no way that you're going to make every employee happy.
Yeah.
You're not going to be always good. I mean, there's just no way. And I think giving yourself a little bit of credit and space to know that I think is helpful. And I'm not great at that, but I work on it.
Yeah. And it's key. And I think that's the thing for high performers, high achievers is like we are the last ones to give ourselves a break and the last ones to give ourselves grace and forgive ourselves. But those are the things I'm really pushing for my clients. How do we be anti-stressed out, calm leaders that own our power? Because I think that's really what it is we
Yes.
have this amazing ability and power. And I think there's sometimes a fear of it, the fear of success and the fear that we have so much power. It's like mind blowing, honestly.
Well, and I think like we are also afraid of, okay, cool. Once I get us here, there's no way I can get us to the next level. Like I'm only good to about here. How am I going to figure out when we're this size or when we get this client? Like, so I think there's that innate fear too, but
Yeah.
just remind yourself that you've always done it. You continue to do bigger and better things.
And
So,
you will innovate, right? Creative part of your brain to innovate.
yep.
Absolutely.
And you'll figure it out or you won't, and it doesn't matter. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, it doesn't, I mean, at the end of the day, doesn't any of it really matter as long as you're staying healthy and happy and everybody's taken care of at home. I mean, I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. At least I do.
Yeah. And I know I think that's a everybody thing, right? Everybody in the
Yeah,
high
yeah,
achieving space, the business owner space. And I think that goes back to like you were speaking about what clarifying your values of what is it that I'm going to measure myself and my success with at the end of the day. Because if you measure everything, that's a
no
lot,
way.
that's too
Yeah.
much. But if you look at those things that are most important to you, like you said, your family, your health, your efforts, like those are the pieces that matter the most.
That health is a big piece because if mentally you're not there and things are struggling and then your health starts to get bad, there's no way. I mean, so that's got to be first and foremost.
Absolutely. What is the belief or feeling state or inspirational story or moment that you'd like to be able to tap into at any time?
Yeah, I think I like looking back at some successes that we've had as doing work for customers. I love reminding myself about certain brands that we've made, but I love that story of just making a difference. I think for me, I always try to think back to former students that I had, and I try to go back to those and what they're doing today.
Yeah.
And for me, there's stories of kids that have told me and come back and said, like, hey, so glad that I happened to take that class because now I'm in video and I'm doing all this and it kind of it's my career. And I think for me, those are the kind of things that I always like to go back to remind myself that, gave people careers. Same thing here. Like we've had people that have been awesome here.
Mhm.
And Cassidy is a great example. I mean, one of my all time, I'll tell her story forever. Worked for me for 5 years, didn't have a ton of experience in marketing and ended up being our COO and running it and ended up getting a great job, basically doubled her salary working for an agency in San Francisco. Her degree wasn't in marketing. And
Mhm.
we just hired her because her sister introduced her. And I'm like, come on, part time, we could use some help. And she was
Great.
great. I mean, she was just awesome. But that for me, trying to remind myself that it wasn't me necessarily, but it was the opportunity that she had here.
Mhm.
I try to go back to that resistance piece a lot and that story
Mm.
because really my son was struggling and he's in supply chain. He's 22, right? Super successful kid, super smart. And he's gone through some things and so he's struggling a little bit. And I think for all of us, we have these negative thoughts about ourselves, and that ends up turning into depression or anxiety or whatever it is. And for him, of course, I was giving him great advice when I needed it at the time too. And I'm like, they're just thoughts.
Yeah.
And they're just thoughts. And if you just recognize them as simple thoughts of that, then they won't get you to that point. Not every time, but they won't get you to that spot.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing with the positive side of it too, is like if you can start to think about all the great things that you've done, I think that helps you put in yourself in a mind that, hey, if I've done that, I'm sure I'm going to do it again.
Absolutely. Because our brain loves that evidence. I love
Oh, it loves evidence. And
we
they're just
love it.
thoughts. And you can, even if they're bad thoughts, you can be like, okay, cool. They're terrible thoughts. And maybe some of it's true. Maybe it's true, but all they are is thoughts. They're nothing more.
And you can decide what to do next. I think that's the power that we
Mhm.
forget that we have that power. And I think that's a great reminder for everyone is, be mindful of what's coming up. And that might be something to process with your therapist, your coach, whatever that,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
sometimes it feels like a lot to do by yourself and you don't have to.
Not at all. Like if you're listening to this and you don't have a therapist and a business coach, then that's the first thing you should do after you stop listening to this podcast.
Yeah, make sure to invest. Yeah. I love it. And, obviously I'm all things mental health. So
Yeah,
I
we know one,
for it.
right? So you could call Angela
Yeah.
here. Yeah, yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about what to expect from your book. What are the
Yep.
highlights? What's the summary of that?
So the book is The Lonely CEO, and you can pre-order it or at least get on the mailing list at thelonelyceo.com. And I really wrote it one because I've always wanted to be an author. Whether it sells any copies or not, I don't really care. At least I'll have a couple on my shelf that I can
Yes.
point to.
Love it.
But I really wanted to write a book that was for the real CEO.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to write one because I've read them all where like, oh, you only got to work a few hours and then do this and then go live in Bali. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, man, I've got 2 dogs and kids and I forgot my daughter's backpack and she's mad at me. And
Yeah.
it's like my employee didn't come in today. And that real life,
Right.
actual real life person who runs a business is who I wanted to talk to. And so I just put in there all the mistakes. I wanted to call it How Not to Run a Business.
Yeah.
And then my wife's like, maybe the next one. And so I called it that. And it's just real life examples of things that we deal with on a personal level, both my wife and I, and then also in business and things that I messed up, lessons I learned. And so it's got like processes in there for marketing and
Mhm.
sales, and then also for mindset. So
Yeah.
things that helped me, has that story about resistance in it. And I just thought, hey, if I can help one business owner not feel so alone and like they weren't crazy, then
Yeah.
I've been successful.
Love it. That's so needed. Because
Yeah.
we do think that a lot.
Yeah.
And we have to be just a little bit crazy to do this.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the book that had that resistance story? Do you remember the name of it?
So there's two, really, the two books. The one I would get for sure is called The War of Art. So Art of War is a book too, but
Yeah.
The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And then The Daily Pressfield is the one that had that story. But The War of Art is a short book and it has the story of resistance in it. And that for me, like I'd never heard of the guy. They
Mhm.
targeted me on Instagram. And of course it was like a pack of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I need that, you know?
Right. Of course. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we do.
Oh, it's only this much money to get him to sign it. Great. You know?
Yeah. Add it to the cart. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing. I think these were some really great reminders and helpful reframes for us business owners. And I'm really excited to check out your book. Thanks so much for spending time with us today. And can you tell people where it's best to find you?
Yep. So lonelyceo.com has the book information. And then if you just go to bone.io, it has all my links. You can see all our agency sites and book a meeting if you just want to say hi.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure. And I hope you all listening got so much out of this. I know I did. And stay tuned for our next episode.
If you're enjoying the Bigger Braver Life show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review so this show gets to more leaders like you. I also invite you to join the weekly newsletter fusing brain science, intuitive-based tools, tips, and strategies for you to elevate your potential, expand your impact, and enjoy your life. Get started at angelamarie.co.